hope it goes. So welcome everybody. We've got quite a substantial agenda, so let's see how we can get on. And all your help and support as well to get through this. So Neil, the first item we've got on the agenda is apologies for absence.
I have received no apologies.
That's excellent. Well done. Excellent. So, right. So, the next item, any declarations of interest? No?
Any member with a declaration?
No. Okay.
Sorry,
then,
Matthew. Matthew, not being rude, that includes you as well.
No declaration of interest.
That's fine. Thank you.
Right. Okay then. Right. So can we confirm the minutes of the meeting from the 3rd of March?
Just a quick one, Madam Chairman. Is my name spelt wrong? I do have this problem all the time, so I don't blame anybody. It's been an A has been put into the name.
Who's this? Sorry.
It's
Who was
Stephanie Threadgill.
Right.
Reginald? Sorry, I do beg your pardon.
I'm sorry, I do apologise.
No.
We were peasants years ago, and we still are. So it's there's no A in it.
Okay then. All right, members. So
brilliant. Thank you.
Subject to that, then, do you all agree the minutes?
Agreed.
Thank you for that. Are there any urgent items?
Chairman, I took the liberty of adding the item on the parking service report. I don't know if you want to take it as an urgent item or just let it ride as an ordinary item.
Right.
Whatever you do, can you tell me where it's going to go on the agenda?
Right. So where should you suggest that we put it on the agenda? What item shall we do it? Because I wanted to just get through. So whereabouts shall we take that? Let's see.
Where's he going?
So, right. Shall we parking guidance on there? I'll be guided by you, Neil. I can't see the right slot here on my paperwork.
Well, it is really for member comment and because it will be going to cabinet.
Right.
With any possibly incorporating any comments you make. So if you wanted to deal with it first,
okay,
and under urgent items, you can.
All right then. Let's in order to expedite the meeting, let's take that then as an urgent item. So we'll take that now then.
Yes. Okay. Richard.
Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to take your item now. So would you like to introduce it, please?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Richard.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening.
Good evening.
I've got some notes because it refers to my report, so I'll be passing over occasionally. I placed the report. I assume. Have you a copy of the report first?
Yeah.
Okay. I placed the report before you for your information and review. And it's the Dartford Council Civil Enforcement and Parking Services report. It was placed before CAP last evening, and a number of discussion points were raised relating to the provision of additional statistical information within future reports and more frequently than on the annual report, which I'll highlight at the end of my introduction. Just the legal part, we're required to publish information in accordance with Part 6 of the Traffic Management Act 2004 and comply with the Secretary of State statutory guidance to local authorities re civil enforcement of parking contraventions. A brief summary of the content is as follows. I've highlighted the aims of the parking services, and really it's just what the report is about, other than stats at the end, is a sort of journey that parking services civil enforcement have taken, and it highlights the aims, what we seek to achieve with aims and objectives, the structure of the team and the supporting structure and the management, the new equipment technology that's come forward in the last period, things like Parking 360, the new machines and the new green eco electric chargers, penalty charge notices issued, and what we're obliged to provide is a financial statement at the end. One thing I will say for those that have seen the report, there was a typo on the very last page. I've now corrected that, where it should say on street, off street, on street, off street. It says on street on each one. That's now been changed and amended appropriately. The report itself is a developing product, and it's being finely tuned. It's something new to me. It will be produced annually and will provide a year-by-year comparison, which I think is important as well. Also on that, clearly, I'll take on board some of the comments which I will give to you now that were raised last evening. Some of the comments raised from presenting last evening related to maybe including full parking contraventions and the number of parking contraventions, how many PCNs issued, where issued, and what visits were made to schools over, say, a 6-month period. Permit bay contraventions as well, regarding how many penalty notices issued for permit bay contraventions and where those were issued. A breakdown of all PCNs issued. That's not as easy as it may sound streetwise. It can be done. Initially, I may look at wards, but I'm speaking to my team to see if the Parking 360 can provide us with that information as well, as the new system is a lot quicker. And patrol activity by civil enforcement officers, what streets they're going to, what areas they're going to, how many visits are being made there as well. So that's the type of things that were raised last evening to build on to the next report, which, as I said, is a developing report on an annual basis, but looking at figures on a 6-month minimum basis. And that's it really. And I welcome any questions on what I've just spoken about.
So, following from advisory last night, then you were saying you've had comments come in since then, or no?
Comments raised last evening really just related to, there was an acceptance of the report, but the future, some additional statistical information relating to the list that I gave around school parking, permit bay contraventions, issue of where PCNs were issued, and activity of our officers around the borough where they're visiting, which is quite understandable as well.
Mm-hmm. I should imagine, certainly I'm aware, being parochial in Wilmington, with the schools going back, more parents possibly driving into school now and things like that, there is going to be an issue. We're hoping it's going to settle down, but obviously I am aware that you were pretty busy when the schools went back because everybody was wanting you to come and, do that. But do you anticipate that might ease off, do you think, once the parents all get used to, the staggering the school times and things like that?
I'd like to see it ease off because, as discussed last evening, what actually happens, we're currently running on 5 staff, which is exceptionally low. A school visit takes a minimum of 3 staff, a very minimum, because of locations and the safety vehicle. And on top of that, I was highlighting yesterday evening, there's a difference between the morning visit, where vehicles pull up, child gets out and runs into school, and we can't get a contravention, compared to the evening visit where they're waiting for child and are parking, and then we have the opportunity to deal with that appropriately. I would hope it eases off, but again, it depends what measures continue that will have an impact on where we're going and the staffing.
Right. Thank you for that. I can't see any other member wants to comment on that. I see Richard Wells and then Kelly.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Richard, for the report. It's a really extensive report, and I know that it was produced under rather unusual circumstances this year, so thank you very much for doing so. I know that Martin and the parking team do an excellent job, and it's good to see that reflected here, particularly in their work around not just enforcing but offering advice to residents and businesses when asked. Just a couple of questions, if I may. Firstly, I'm sure in previous years' reports we've included a list of car parks with number of spaces by type, operational times, cost, etc. And I wonder if there's a reason why that's not included this year, and whether that might be a useful thing to include in terms of information for residents. Second question is obviously good to see that we're offering like cashless payment alternatives, so Ringo app, for example. And I wonder if going forward, it might be useful to provide some information on the percentage of tickets which are bought via this method rather than via cash. It might be something that's interesting for us, like in future years, to monitor that. And finally, just a couple of questions about the figures, if I can. Where we have the number of PCNs which were cancelled or written off, are those PCNs where the informal appeal was upheld, or are they PCNs where we decided that we couldn't collect them for some reason? And also, finally, in terms of the breakdown by month for the last year, can you just remind me what happened in October, why we had a big fall then? I've tried to think of a reason and my memory's failed me. So if you could let us know, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Okay, sorry.
and can you speak up a little bit? I think members are having trouble hearing you. Well, okay.
Okay, is that any better?
Yeah, it is. Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to raise my volume as well.
Good.
Hopefully that should be a lot better.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, on the last point, I'll refer to the detail in a moment, but with regard to the other points, I'm glad you raised Ringo, because I can't give you the figures. I've got an email, I had an email recently, but it's really encouraging. It's really being taken up, and quite a lot of our payments are now on the Ringo system. I was given a percentage by Martin, and I think it's gone up about 40% already compared to the first month. And long may that continue. And it's something we're pushing quite in a big way. And I also believe we're looking at the one where they can actually pay. I can't remember the terminology now, but actually in one of the shops in Market Street.
Okay.
As well. It can be a little bit difficult because there can be a time lag. But it's something we're looking at the moment to bring in. But Ringo is something really that we're pushing full time for the future, and the cashless side. But again, that's another debate altogether. The next part, the reason the car park spaces weren't included, and I have got some data on that. All the information that I was given in the past has changed, and it was wrong. We've had a lot of changes with the development of the town centre.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost the Iceland car park. We've lost other car parks. We've added Ifield Road. We've had the Acacia development ongoing and spaces coming online, and we weren't aware of all the exact numbers until that was finalised. So I sat down with Martin and Dan, and it was decided we can't give a true figure because of all the changes. Once all the development's finished, we're in a position to give those figures.
Brilliant.
Because it'd be wrong to give inaccurate figures.
Absolutely right.
It'd be
Yeah.
totally wrong at the moment, having lost Central in the past as well, quite a few car parks. So that's another thing. Plus as well, there was an issue whether we were going to lose Westgate at this time, but we're not. So we just couldn't give an accurate figure on that one. The PCNs written off, their PCNs, we're quite good on our error rate, believe it or not. Some councils run about 25, 27% on their error rate. Martin is quite hot with Dan on the completion of the evidence on the PCNs and getting things right, checking the signage, taking pictures of the contravention, etc. So I believe we pick up roughly about an 8% error rate on the tickets that we send back. Other ones are done against appeal, and others are really where they're sat with the bailiffs. In all probability, we've had no bailiff service now. It's just resumed about a week ago nationally, and that may see a change for us then. So there's a lot of reasons behind that, but I'm quite confident on our write-offs, which is the ones that are our fault. We're doing really well at about 8%, and I looked at that recently. I'm going to look at the last page, the page with the figures for October. Right. Is it the income or the PCNs?
The income, sorry, yeah.
Okay. Right. That's not including penalty charge notices. Are we referring to the one that went from 36,000 down to 13?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that one.
I can remember discussing that at the time because we couldn't see a real reason for the blip. I believe, I spoke to Lynn Hodson on finance, and I'm just trying to think back now. We did lose some car parking at that time, but also on top of that, there's a I'll get the information from Lynn. I can remember saying there's a reconfiguration of figures as well and income. And she explained to me that that would have impacted on one of the months. I'm thinking back a long way now, but there was a good reason for that. And what I will do, I'll go back to Lynn, because Lynn Hodgson, who had the discussion with me, because we picked up on that in October, because it was a huge fall. One was to do with losing some car park space at the time, but another was something to do with the way the figures were configured. So I will come back on that one.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. And it might be due to all us pensioners not coming out at all and being locked in and not to and stuff. Kelly, you're next.
I'm next. Thank you, Anne. I'm probably going to annoy everyone that was there last night by reiterating the same points I said at CAP yesterday. Thank you for this report. As I said last night, it's really helpful. And I thank you for the work you've done additionally with myself to get some of the figures for my ward of Stonehouse on parking contravenes there. Because I find a lot of my residents feel that their road doesn't get the attention that it deserves. So it's really helpful to be able to show them what it does and doesn't get and to make those judgments, fairly. I'm sorry to sound like a broken record and I'm waiting for everyone to raise their eyebrows, but I still maintain that I think we need additional resources for Richard's team, and that there is a lot more very, very dangerous parking that impacts on people's lives in Dartford that needs dealing with. But I'll stop there because everyone's heard me say this before, but I will just make the point one last time while we're on the matter.
Thank you.
Julie,
Sorry, Julie, you want to come in now? Yep. You're muted, Julie. If you could unmute. That's it.
Sorry, it's taking me time. I was going to say,
okay.
I'm also aware that I think Jeremy raised his hand earlier and also
sorry,
Jan,
okay.
but I will jump in because my point is very quick. And it's just an observation on the figures, or a question on the figures. The penalty charge notices served. I just wondered if there was a reason why the 10 PCNs issued by post, that's the only number that's increased for the year 2019 and 20. I wondered if there was a change on emphasis or if it was just a coincidental type of blip.
To my own knowledge, I believe that would be a coincidental blip.
Okay, yep.
It's not something we put, but we may see more of that over the current period, clearly because of current issues. So you may see a rise in the future figures.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Neil, you'll have to help me along, or Alan here. It's not showing up on my screen who's indicating to speak. So
Alan,
would you say Jeremy's next?
I'm noticing the man as usual. Jeremy is next.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. I think going ahead, there are probably two really, really big issues for us in parking. The first is the issue of pavement parking, and I know we're going to address that as a specific item later on. That's one of the causes of real irritation in our community. And the second issue is school parking. And I think it's time for us to be really frank about school parking. There are two reasons. I mean, we had a very long look at it, and we've had all sorts of expert advice. We've had people in to try and crack this problem. And I think it boils down into two distinct categories. There are geographical reasons around schools where schools were never designed to have this number of parents arriving by car. And it's very difficult to change the geography. We can do some things, but it's very difficult to change the geography around schools. They simply weren't designed for it. Secondly, I think school designers, the people who actually are the architects around schools, have missed the chance in the past of actually accommodating what I think is colloquially known as kiss and go slots now, so that cars can actually enter the school site more safely in very specific places and drop their kids off and then go, a bit like airport car parking. But then the third category, if you like, or the second subcategory, is frankly people who are just behaving really, really badly around schools. And I can't understand it. And I think one of the things we're going to have to focus upon going forward, we're going to have to try to make parking dangerously around schools as antisocial as we used to make drink driving or driving without a seatbelt. Because every day we are playing roulette with young people's lives. And I hear what Kelly and others say about increasing the number of officers out there. But actually, you could increase the number by tenfold and still not be able to guarantee the safety of kids when you've got parents and drivers behaving so badly. So I think we're going to have some sort of concerted effort, and I think the government should help us. Really, I think there should be an accelerated or almost like a more egregious bit of parking legislation around schools that enables us to levy heavier penalties. Because I see it every day. I'm sure we all do around schools. Parents are some parents, a small number, are single-mindedly focused upon getting as close as possible to the school. And I find it extraordinary. Now, I think there are things we can do, but it's going to be a tough ask to change it, given the geography of some of our schools. I think all we can rely on is hoping that drivers are more sensitive, more sensible, and frankly adhere to the law around schools a bit more. But it's one of those issues we're going to have to pick up. For me, along with pavement parking, it's the biggest parking priority. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, thank you for that, Jeremy. I was able to, my schools in Wilmington have set up a little liaison group to talk about the very issues. Obviously, it's about staggering school times because the heavy congestion that we have in Wilmington. But I did, my contribution to the meeting was, again, my concern about safety and everything like that. And the head teachers themselves said they are appalled when they go out and look at what some of the parents are doing, and they keep on sending out communications and things like that. So again, I've suggested that we can go in and do a little bit of education in the schools, but really we have, as you say, you're absolutely right, we've got to penalise the parents. But as I say, Julie, you wanted to come back, and then I see Brian is indicating.
No, I'm responding as advice to people wanting to speak. Jan Ozog.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much. Two questions. Firstly,
yeah.
thank you.
All right, go.
Thank you to Richard for that report. It's very informative. Can I ask, how long between issuing a penalty charge notice on a abandoned vehicle or a seller's vehicle before action is taken? There's been a vehicle parked outside our house for a number of months. It's been reported a few times. It does now have a penalty charge notice on the windscreen with the do not ignore, but that was been there for like 2 weeks. I just wonder what sort of time frame we're looking at between notice served or being towed. That's one question. And secondly, I don't think it's in Richard's remit, but how to pay for car parks. I'm always in favour of those that you get a takeout ticket to start when you park, and then when you've finish what you're doing, you put it back in the machine, it tells you how much it is, so you don't have to guess how long you're going to be in town or rush back for certain towns. If we can change the main car parks in town centre to these, that would be most appreciated.
Thank you for that. I think that's obviously one of yours is perhaps it can be taken offline with the one that's outside your house. I mean,
yeah,
obviously there's that, and then there's the other one about different style of car parking. I think a lot of it is that we just need to limit people to a certain amount of time. Otherwise, that won't free up the car parks. But I'm sure, do you want to come back onto that? No.
Yes, Chairman. The first point related to abandoned vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
We do and we do not. My team, deal with abandoned vehicles. If there's a vehicle there, what the civil enforcement officers will do, if there's a vehicle parked that's abandoned, or they've issued a ticket and they come back to that, and it appears to be abandoned, that should, and I'll take details of that vehicle if possible, please, because it should be referred to the Waste Services team, the abandoned vehicles officer, Emma and Joe. They would then place the appropriate notice on that vehicle as an abandoned vehicle, and then within 14 days that should be towed away as well. Okay. And the second point, the parking machines, we've just had all our new machines fitted recently, and over the last 12 months, and 18 months. And I understand that they are ticket machines, but also contactless and Ringo machines as well. It's a difficult one to comment on because we've only just placed the new machines. But again, we are encouraging where we can the Ringo type payment and cashless payment, because to be quite honest, with the old machines we had, which were much easier to get into, it was horrid the amount of times that our machines were jemmied open and the contents were stolen. What we're finding at the moment, we've got far less money in the machines, and it would be a far more it would be far better to have no cash in the machines, understandably, but we also accept there's people that still wish to use cash, and that's important as well. But at the moment, the machines we got are new ticket machines, Ringo machines, the MS ones, and they'll be with us for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, thanks very much for that answer. Having worked in car park management, I'm aware of the trouble you get, especially outside car parks. Travelling around Kent, I find Whitstable car parks probably the easiest ones to use in the whole of Kent I've been to, and maybe we can discuss that at a later date.
Thank you for that. Yeah, well, thank you for that. Stephanie, I think, Brian, you wanted to come in then, Stephanie, and then I think we'll move on. All right.
I'm recording the people for you, as usual. Julie is next. And
Julie's
then
next.
Hi, thank you.
Sorry, yes,
Again, sorry. It was just further to Jeremy's comments really about the schools. I have got an issue which I will be taking up with Richard separately, but it's not just the parents parking with the schools. It's the older students that have cars and their parking of their vehicles throughout the day, and in consideration to residents. In short, there's an incident where I've had a resident in touch with me. He lives next to a fast food shop, and school pupils are driving their cars at lunchtime there and parking in front of his drive, as well as contending with the parents and so on and so forth. So I think it very much needs to be done in conjunction with the schools, to get the schools on board as well, to be supporting whatever actions and measures we take.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Officer. Brian, you wanted to come in next?
Oh, I was going to come in there, but I'll come in now. Yeah. You know, I appreciate what Jeremy is saying about enforcement and not increasing enforcement. That's one of the reasons why we've asked for the parking tickets at schools to be monitored, so we can see how effective the current enforcement is. I think the general perception throughout residents is that we are not being strict enough at the schools, and that we should be doing something more. I hope that in 6 months' time, when we've seen the differences in PCNs over the 6 months, we might be in a position to assess whether we are strong enough. If we are not, then we do need to go and do something more about it, because the residents are genuinely concerned about the safety and about the inconvenience. And I don't think we can carry on much longer without increasing enforcement in that particular area. Going back to Ringo, many councils actually give a discount for paying cashless. Have you any thoughts on doing that, Richard?
That isn't something that we've considered, because I believe that the discount is built into the small percentage that Ringo's paid. So basically, every time Ringo's used, we pay a small percentage to them, and possibly, I believe, councils waiver that and do not include it in their price.
Right.
Yeah, it just will help the cashless society going forward. It might help us in that. Yeah. I think Stephanie wishes to speak, Anne.
Thank you. That's Stephanie.
Yeah, it's just really an observation to add what yourself said and Jeremy, is that in our areas, Kelly knows that we have 3 what I call primary schools, because I know that's not PC, and another senior school that is growing fast. The parking problem in all those areas has been going on for years and years and years. In fact, the previous head at Stone even used to name and shame them in the assembly. It still made no difference. All you get is, and if anybody approaches them, the PCSOs, etc., could you move on? They get just abused, and the abuse is unbelievable. And I personally wouldn't want to be one of them, because I have observed it, and it's not pleasant at all. And you're quite shocked with what they say, because it's never them that's in the wrong. It's always the other person that's dropping the kid off, not them double parking, etc. So it's been going on for years, and it needs to really, something needs to be done, because I think we've been lucky we haven't had more accidents. So It was only to add to what you said, Anne.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Then, as I say, the recommendation here is that that we consider it and take the comments. And I think Neil will again. We've got it at cabinet again on Thursday, so I think we'll take on board all those comments and see if we can find a way forward. And certainly, I think Jeremy's comments about tougher. We may have to ask our MP to look at some legislation or something like that, because I think everybody's suffering from it. It's not just us. I mean, I do know one of my colleagues has got school down in Margate, some sort of scheme that they're taking up there where it's a car-free zone and you're not allowed to. You have to, but a lot of places displacement would be intolerable. So it's one of these things that sometimes the cure is worse than the cause. So we just have to look and see if we can find some way to alleviate. So members, thank you for that. So is that the recommendation?
I think Richard wanted to say something.
Thank you, Richard.
Do you wish to speak?
Yes, I was just going to add just an overview of some of the things that we discussed. Someone mentioned the parking over driveways, etc., and going to the takeaway. We can only deal with contraventions on yellow lines, etc. If someone's parking over a driveway, then that would be a police matter as it sits at the moment. And the other points is I've experienced the vile abuse, especially at Stone, when I've been there with the civil enforcement officers and PCSOs, and the abuse in front of the parents that is directed towards us is absolutely vile. That's all I can say. And the other point with parking, it's not so easy at schools in the morning, as I've said before. They pull up, we have no powers if they pull up and the child gets out and goes into school. Where we do have the powers is in the evening when they return and they're waiting. But again, we have to show, people always talk about the 10-minute period. Well, the 10-minute period doesn't exist if they're not loading or unloading, for example, an item. But again, once we arrive and we deal with one, they all make off. And we clearly see, and from Stone is a very good example, we've been there that evening. The following day, they may give it part of the day, but the following day, they're all back again. So it's a really difficult situation. That's why the tickets, the PCNs, won't be overly high, because we don't issue too many in the morning unless we're on the zigzags. And in the evenings, we may get one or two, as I've found when I've attended the team, but then the others will just leave. So they just don't learn.
Yeah, I appreciate. I think the statistics being able to give to residents that we have actually been attending is important. I do recognise, having been with your officers in Wilmington, that as soon as we turn up, they drive off and go away again, and so you've lost the drive away. And we did discuss when it was legal to issue a drive away ticket and when it was not. But yeah.
Right.
Again, it's education of the schools, and I think, and we've got one in Wilmington. Perhaps we need to extend this in other schools as well. And we'll talk about pavement parking later on, and I think we can talk about pavement parking near schools as part of that discussion.
Well, thank you for that. And Richard, please pass on our thanks to the team, because I know you've got an extremely difficult job, and I thought it was an excellent report, very easy to read, and I should keep it as a reference document myself, because I'm still into paper copies with things. But thank you very much, Kelly. Before we move to the recommendation, you wanted to just say
just very quickly. I think the point that Richard made about things that are police matters and things that are enforcement matters is really quite valuable. And I wonder if there's any mileage in us putting some of that kind of information on platforms we've got now, like Dartford Together, and also just more kind of, like the posters you see saying you shouldn't speak to ambulance, you shouldn't be harassing ambulance workers and you shouldn't be speaking to staff like that. I wonder about the merit in having some of those messages about how people speak to Richard's team, not least because I really fear for the language that some of the children on St John's Road here to do with parking. So I'm not saying it will make a big difference, but I think just culturally it will be worth having some of those messages across some of our platforms. Just a thought.
Well, I think certainly we can. We'll say the leaders listening as well. So I think we'll take on board all those comments and see what we can come up with at the cabinet. And that. So members happy to accept that and the recommendations there? Thank you for that. Thank you. Struggling a bit. So we're now going to move on to references from other committees. Neil, we have none? No references from other committees. I've requested a verbal update on the culture. Neil, we had an update on the Chatsworth Road and the Arundel Road, and we got a response back from KCC. And I've just agreed that you can read that out because, again, we're trying to help and find a way forward. And I know, Matthew, this is a particular issue for you, but Neil, if you could read out the response that we've got back
Chairman,
from KCC.
what I've got is the response from Shane Heimers relating to camera enforcement in the introduction of camera enforcement in the borough, not relating to Councillor Davis's school item. What I've received this evening was a note from Shane saying that he's delighted to inform us that we have now had director and cabinet member agreement to pursue ANPR enforcement for fast track. We need to produce a forthcoming executive decision paper ahead of a Environment and Transport Committee report for ratification. This will take a little while, but they're hoping to conclude that by the end of this year. Concurrently, we're now looking to draw up an agreement so that KCC and ourselves can introduce ANPR on the following routes: the Ingress Park Busway, the Blue Water to Whitecliff Tunnel, and the Bridge Estate, subject to no solution being found to retain the existing gates. Now that info was received from Shane Heimers this afternoon. I am aware that when this was discussed last time, the leader did raise the issue of how this could be financed, and I'm guessing something will have to go to our cabinet as well as to KCC cabinet to sort this out. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. As I say, I had an email this afternoon from Denise Sutton on the other point, Matthew, which I CC'd you into. So, but you might want to pick it up again later. So, right. So then we're moving on to the Department of Transport's consultation pavement parking. Right, who's going to take this one?
Lookman, where are you, Lookman?
Is that Lookman? Yeah, thank you, Lookman.
Where's he going?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So this paper is, I'm sure members are aware that there is a consultation going on pavement parking. And this is just to bring to your attention what the options they're consulting on. The open consultation has been launched by Department for Transport started on the 31st of August, and it's going to end on the 22nd of November. So the recommendation is that the board notes the options and make recommendations on a way forward to cabinet. Just a bit of background, members might be aware that apart from London, most local authorities are unable to enforce pavement parking. And specifically, local authorities outside London can only enforce vehicles that are parked in convention of existing weighting restrictions, can enforce designated prohibition being implemented through a traffic regulation order, and also can enforce vehicle parked in a heavy vehicle operating weighted over 7.5 tons. So the enforcement of a necessary obstruction on the highway already exists, but as a criminal offense, so therefore can only be enforced by the police. So some time ago, I think in March 2018, the GFT embarked on an agenda of improving accessible transport with a commitment to review laws on pavement parking. And so the challenge of that study actually gave them an insight into some of the challenges that is faced by, particularly by people, vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians and disabled wheelchair users and people with prams. As a result, just moving on to the consultation options. As a result, the government have sort of given out 3 options to consult on. One is to improve the TRO process under which local authorities can already prohibit pavement parking. The second option is to have a wholesale legislative change to allow local authorities with civil parking enforcement powers to enforce against unnecessary obstruction. And then the last option is a legislative change to introduce a London-style pavement policy prohibition throughout England. They've also allowed for people to come up with their own ideas about how to manage pavement parking. So as I said, the consultation closes on the 22nd of November 2020. We've brought this report forward really to introduce all of the options and for members to consider. And obviously, I'm open to, if I can answer any of the questions you have, I'll try my best to do that. And I'm sure Richard will probably be able to support as well. But that's the report in a nutshell, is to just bring to the fore the options they're consulting about.
But to say it is a difficult one, because in some places in the town, the older parts of the town, it's just safer for people to park, and they have nowhere else to park. If you look at parts of Newtown and things like that, and other places, and again, so it's a very difficult one. So just got to look for advice really, and members to how they would see a way forward on. A wholesale one won't work, but how do we do it? Maybe we look at the options with the schools and things like that, you know, and do it certain times of the day that, you know, you can't do it, and certain times you can. I don't know. It's going to be a really difficult one for us to do that. But Kerry, you wanted to come in there.
But this came up at our Residents Association meeting last night that Stephanie and I were at, and people certainly are engaging, I think, with this consultation, and I think there's quite strong views on it. But I think there is a problem with pavement parking in parts of the town, and it certainly, I think, is really difficult for a lot of disabled people now to get along on pavements in wheelchairs or mobility buggies or prams and things. Equally, I take your point out that there's parts of the town where it's much safer to park on the pavement. So I think there is a sort of middle ground here. And I'm aware of various streets in Sidcup where they kind of paint lines of pavements you're allowed to park on, and others where it's not prohibited. So I appreciate that's a lot of work, but I think that's kind of the route I would go, or would be to be sort of safety in mind, to look at streets where it is a possibility, and streets where absolutely people shouldn't be parking on the pavement and are really, you know, endangering the safety of others. Steph, I don't know if you want to say anything that I missed out from what we discussed last night.
I've got Stephanie, and then I'll bring Richard Wells in. Yeah.
Peter Harmon's waiting as well.
Wanted to speak first.
Okay, thank you. Sorry?
Peter Harmon wanted to.
Sorry, as I say, I'm struggling because nothing's showing up on my screen.
I'll watch them for you and let you know, Anne.
Thank you. So,
agreed,
Peter.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just going to ask Luckman to clarify on option 1, because the process where we could already prohibit pavement parking. So if you have a roadway where we're happy for a vehicle to park next to the curb, but not on the pavement, then I wonder what the process there is, because obviously yellow lines would stop on pavement parking, but would also stop them parking on the carriageway. So I'm wondering which process they're talking about there, under which local authorities can already prohibit pavement parking.
Stephanie?
Sorry, as Kelly said, we had this discussion yesterday, and really and truly, with Dartford being Dartford and an old town, and especially up our area, it is hard. It is very hard, because even when Penny's putting yellow lines and things like that, you get them moving further down, and then they park really badly opposite each other, especially Hill House Road. we have not got an answer, and it's really hard. But again, as Kelly said, there are different areas, Sidcup, Erith and everything, that if the path is wide enough, they do paint white lines to get them off the carriage way, just as long as you can get your, like you say, wheelchair, etc. So yes, it's a lot of work, but maybe it could at least be started and show that we are a caring council, so to speak.
Thank you for that.
Richard next, I think.
Richard Wells,
And then
thank you.
Jeremy.
Thank you, Brian. That's very helpful, Brian. Thank you. Richard Wells.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Lookman, for bringing this report. I think we can all appreciate the motivation behind it, and it's obviously right that we consider any proposals which make our pavements more accessible to everyone, but it's also our duty, of course, to consider the impact. So, I mean, I think we're all aware of areas where pavement parking takes place and areas where it causes a problem, and also areas, of course, where it actually doesn't cause a huge problem, and actually not having pavement parking could lead to another safety issue. So, for example, there's some areas where we've got really wide pavements and easily big enough for a parked car, and still leaving relatively large spaces for pedestrians. In some cases, also room for cycle lanes right through the middle as well. But in those cases, moving the parking to the road could actually cause a bigger issue, and it could actually disrupt the flow of traffic pretty significantly. So in other areas, the roads are narrower, and so having parked cars on the road, moving all the parked cars to the road, could actually then result in another safety issue, because it could mean that emergency vehicles can't get through. It could mean that refuse trucks couldn't get through. So that's another just as serious a safety issue. These proposals, this consultation, to be fair, actually they do consider there's different scenarios. So what I think we need to consider is how we actually deal with that. So, I mean, option 3, which is the one which is like London, would mean that the ban on pavement parking would be a default. So, unless indicated, so basically, pavement parking wouldn't be allowed anywhere unless indicated otherwise. So, and that would be like we've seen in like Bexley and Sidcup. Then it would mean there'd be signs to say it's allowed here, and there'd be bays painted on the pavement, half on the pavement, half on the road. The option 1, I believe it is, which would be where we are now, which would be by default, we would be allowing pavement parking, but it would be made a lot easier to ban it by exception by improving the TRA process to allow us to do so. Personally, so basically it's a balance. It's a balance of, and it's how we actually want to approach that. Personally, based on what I've read at the moment, I would be slightly cautious about throwing all our support behind option 3, which is the London-style ban, and having that as a default, because I think this would require a huge amount of work to set up. It would need to basically identify all the areas where parking is an issue, where pavement parking takes place, and where it is an issue, and then we'd have to decide in which areas we would still allow it and in which areas we wouldn't allow it. So all the exceptions would then have to be, we have to have signage in all those areas, and then we'd have to have bays in all those areas. So that would actually take a long while to actually implement, and it would cost a lot. That's not to say it's a bad thing. I mean, it could still be fine, but it's something we have to consider, and we have to consider what the cost would be, how long it would take, and where the money would come from for that. Option 2, which Luca mentioned, is essentially to give the local authority power to issue PCNs for unnecessary obstruction. On the face of it, that makes sense, because at the moment that can only be enforced by the police. In reality, that still, for me, needs a bit more guidance as well. That, to me, the idea of unnecessary obstruction is actually rather vague. It's not the easiest of law to interpret, and because it's an actual obstruction rather than a perceived obstruction, it's not always the easiest law to enforce. So, as I said, in order for that one, it would be useful to have more guidance in terms of what unnecessary obstruction would be, because otherwise it could be a case of handing a power to the council, which in practice is rather difficult for the council to actually use. Of the 3, at the moment, I would be more comfortable with option 1, because that would mean that pavement parking is allowed by default, pavement parking is allowed by default, but it would give us the option to then target this into the areas where it's needed. It will give us a chance to consult with residents, which has always been an important use for our traffic, important in our use of traffic regulations. But this, of course, also requires more information, because it depends a lot on what the simplified TRO process would be. My understanding, Lookman, you're nodding, so I mean, I think it looks like you're agreeing with me on this. I believe that's still out for consultation as well. We're not clear what the improved TRO process would be. If that actually was made a lot easier, it was made a lot more streamlined, then that would seem like the more sensible solution, because it means we could actually look around, we could actually then look at the areas where it's affected, where we might want to actually ban pavement parking and actually look at the impacts of it. But as I said, I mean, I've no problem with any of them. It's just that they would all need certain different types of information. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Richard. Any other members want to comment on that?
Jeremy, next, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think from the point of view of what all of us see every day, and the frustration of seeing people with prams or wheelchairs unable to access, enjoy their local area, enjoy their local lives, I think we do need the powers, and I think we must just welcome the fact that any powers that we get will be used appropriately. You could actually work back from option 3, and you could do a desk exercise before you implemented it, but I think it would be quite a long process to cover every single road in the borough. And I think, therefore, it would be better for us to have these powers from the other end, which enable us to be clear about which ones we implement. The key to this, I think, is going to be communication and signage, though. People do need to be clear. We shouldn't be tricking people when you've got a variable situation. Highways engineers and highways marking people hate variable signage because it does create confusion in people. Normally, you have a standard piece of the highway code and that's it. Here, the signage is going to be crucial. And I think it's possible under the legislation for us to develop something very good for Dartford. I think you could develop a Dartford-only solution. You could pick a colour. You could pick a green lane. You could pick a blue line or something, which effectively marks when the pavement is not to be parked on. That gives us an option which you can then support with signage and make it clear and make it a positive thing. I think most drivers do understand that in some places it's simply unacceptable, and they do it anyway because it's not against the law as they see it. So I welcome it. I mean, we've got to just grasp these opportunities with both hands. We could cope with any of them really, but I think the option 3 would require an awful lot of desk work, which might take a long time before we can start implementing, whereas option 1 would pretty much enable us to get on with it from day one.
Well, thank you for that. So Brian, are you wanting to come in? Yeah.
Stephanie's next, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Stephanie. No,
Stephanie, you're muted.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good. I'm just agreeing with Richard. He worried me at the start when he said pushing all the cars onto the road. That wasn't what Kelly and I were saying. Some of the paths are so wide that you can have actual parking spaces on the path and walk and still have a little bit of ground, so to speak. But then he cleared it up later, so I'll let him off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So,
can I add my part? No, I
yes,
don't
please,
think anybody else wants to speak. Well, Julie does. You go next, Julie.
No, thank you.
Thank you. It's just a very quick point. Totally agree with everything that Richard said, and I've noted that in the comments. I just really wanted to emphasise that I think it would be very foolhardy to completely rule out pavement parking. There are areas. I'll quote Shepherd's Lane as an example. Clearly, pavement parking there is safe. There's a wide pavement. To move cars onto the road because they're not allowed on the pavement would cause more issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, I think the whole point here is that with option 1, we can do things gradually, and we can get things done quickly. With option 3, if we went for that, as the leader has said, we've got to do a big exercise to decide what streets will be allowing parking and which ones will not. And then there's a point, when does it come in? How could you manage such a momentous change all over the whole of the borough? However, if you go to option 1 and you then start with the fact that pavement parking is legal and make it illegal in those areas which it is most critical to be illegal, we can do that, and then move on through the less severe areas till we get a complete picture. And that could take years. I've been involved in trying to do that in other areas, and trying to do the London style one just gives chaos, with too much to do beforehand and too much to do all at once. And so therefore I would support option 1, gives us the control to do what we want, where we want, when we want, over the length of time that we want, with the minimum disruption to anybody at the time.
Well, thank you for that. So, members, would you support that proposal that we go for option 1? But obviously, there's more work to be done on that, and as I say, we need our own local schemes, don't we? As I say, because what works in Dartford is not going to work in Gravesend or Whitstable, as I say. So, members, would you agree then that we go? Thank you for that.
I see no disagreement.
Kelly, you just wanted to come in there.
Yes. No, sorry, I was putting my hand up to agree. I was voting.
Thank you very much.
When you agree, put your thumbs up, please, then I can see them.
Right,
thumbs down if you don't want to.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard.
So members, you've got that, Neil, and we'll do that. And obviously, again, that as I say, Cabinet will hear what we're saying anyway, and we'll specific. And thank you, Lukeman, for all your hard work on that. So then we're going to move on to the next one, which is
item 9,
which is parking guidance and briefings on aims and use. So if you've got the report that was followed there, and is that you again, Lukeman? Thank you.
Yes, that's me again. So thank you, Chair. So this report, I should say before I start that the agenda, the appendix A is the one that says prioritizing the investigation and implementation of parking management scheme guidance. So that would be the actual guidance document. And the one that says appendix A is just an addendum to appendix A. So it's slightly confusing. Probably that's my fault. Okay. So we both we've been working on how to simplify issues when we get complaints from residents and we get letters sent to us from councillors on how we can prioritize any reported parking issues in the borough for investigation and development of a parking scheme. And so the recommendation is that the board considers the report and makes recommendations to the Cabinet. And those recommendations are as outlined in paragraph 3.8 of the report. In terms of background, the demand for schemes to address ongoing pressure on parking in the borough is increasing, particularly in and around Dartford Town Centre. So currently we introduce some of the schemes based on the pressure we get from local residents and local councillors. And we do it in terms of how, in what order are they approved. But the challenge we've had is in terms of resource, and I think a few people touched on resource earlier, and it's been difficult to keep up with the demand. So, and also it's been difficult to explain that to residents, and probably sometimes to make sure that everybody that is involved in this has an understanding of how we look at taking schemes forward. So the idea of the new guidance is to support existing Cabinet approval protocols and applicable statutory requirements, and to provide residents with clarity and stakeholders in terms of how we take things forward. So the Appendix A basically gives us the guidance that we've produced recently. The guidance outlines the end-to-end activities to be undertaken during the process. If you look at the Appendix A, on the front page, it gives you the end-to-end stage. But the one that we really want to talk about is the initiation and the prioritization. The bits, and that's figure 1 I'm referring to now on page 2 of 7 of the appendix. And basically the second part of that, which is the investigation and consultation, is standard, is what we do anyway. So that, but this is just to give you the end-to-end picture of what the whole process. But the one we're really concerned about is the initiation and the prioritization. So if we sort of go to the guidance on paragraph 3.5, that basically sets out what sort of areas that we're using to rank and prioritize any reported parking issue. So there are 4 areas. There is safety, which is based on empirical methods of identifying potential safety risks. Kent County Council, anything associated with, if we can establish anything that is associated with a safety risk, Kent County Council have the responsibility for that. But as a local authority, we've got to establish whether something is safety related or has a potential safety risk. So that there is that aspect of safety that we're trying to look at. And categories 1, 2 on page 3 of the guidance document shows the criteria that we're using for that. We then look at the parking issue. Are you having problems on your street in terms of the parking issue you're experiencing, or you're having problems adjacent to your street? So how far is that problem from your street, and how difficult it is for you to park, and what impact does it have on you or your household? Item 3 is about the level of support. Do you have the majority of the support of the local residents and the ward councillors? So we're trying to establish that. And finally, we're trying to establish whether the parking issue is close to an area of significant demand. So for example, the school, a transport hub, such as station, bus terminal, and so on and so forth. So this guidance that we've got now gives us a series of questions that I should point out that the idea of this is to get us over the first hurdle, which is about getting that reported issue to the council so that the council can prioritize the investigation and maybe developing a scheme. So this is not the end of the process. This is just the beginning. So I don't know whether you want to go through each criteria, but for each area, we've got a series of questions. And for each question, if we're ticking yes, the yes basically indicate that we have an issue that we have to address. And with the yes, we have a traffic light system. And that traffic light system basically says if you have a red or a number, then we have an issue. It is something we need to address for each category. So if by the end of this exercise, you tick all of the boxes, you tick all of the yeses, and you tick most of the reds and the amber, then this is now met the criteria for including in a sort of priority list. And then we have to do the exercise of saying in which timeline does it come into. So that's the idea, that's the principle behind it. We've run this by Kent County Council, and they are happy that is in line with their policy, that they are clear that it goes according to what you would expect. And also we are running a pilot study of the guidance at the moment in the Stone Ward. The famous St. George's Road is what we're sort of relating to, and we're involved, and Councillor Kelly Grehan, Richard Wells, and Councillor Tom Oliver are also involved. We're also involved with Brent School. We're going to run this for about 3 months to try and gather the information, and at the end of that 3 months, we'll review whether A, whether it meets the criteria, and B, whether it's working as a guidance, or can we have any improvements or anything like that. So I don't know whether you have any questions, but The idea is that we review the guidance. So it's a working guidance, so to speak, and we review it when at the end of the pilot study to see whether there's any changes we need to make to it or improvement, or whether the members are happy to go ahead with such guidance. And that's it.
Thank you for that. Does any member want to comment on that? It seems a very sensible way forward, especially if we've got some members working on something like that. I think the recommendation is very sound, and it's something gives us a starting point. I think we needed a starting point, and this is a very good starting point. So, any members just want to comment on that? Not seeing anything.
Kelly, to start with.
Yeah, just wanted to comment. Thank you, Luqman, for all the work you've done on this, and particularly for involving Councillor Oliver and myself. It's been really useful, and it's been good to have something we can take back to residents and start talking about, because I think I've already mentioned St John's Road twice in the course of this meeting, so there is a lot of issues there. So I just want to say we're looking forward to getting started on it really, and let's see where it takes us. Until we try, we won't know, but I'm feeling hopeful.
Well, thank you for that.
Any other comments? Can I come in, please, Anne?
Yes, please. Just do, Brian. Yes, please.
Evidence of safety issues. I'm concerned that you are requiring video evidence. I ask you, how are you going to get video evidence of near misses and such like, unless you're there 24/7 watching it? A lot of these things are absolutely correct, but we have got to rely upon verbal evidence and not demand video evidence, because you're looking at that. Unless you've got the video evidence, it doesn't apply. So I think councillors, we know what's happening. We know residents will say, yeah, I saw it, I saw it, I saw it. That's enough for me to say it happened without the video. So I'm concerned that you put down the requirement to have video evidence in certain areas. Secondly, when you've got parking displaced further down the road, let's be careful. I think it's much better to put some distance in there. There's some very long roads. And so if you've got a very long road with 300 houses on it, whatever, say it's just displaced 200 houses down, I don't think is right. So let's put some distances into that so we can be more precise. And when I come to category 6, evidence of parking pressures with areas of significant parking pressure. You say within the boundary of the town centre. But there are other local shopping areas and there can be other areas of attraction. So I cannot accept that this can only be within the town centre. We get parking pressures, even at small six shop parades that we need to consider as equally to that within the town centre. So I object to the town centre being within the classifications of category 6. I see you, Richard. Do you want to come back?
Yes, I see you there, Richard. Come in.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify on that, the areas of significant pressure, it doesn't just include the town centre. I'm sorry it reads like that way, but it's supposed to include any area of significant parking pressure. So it includes any like local shops or like a new development or a hospital or a train station, just things like that.
Okay.
The reason actually we put that in, just to say, was in order to reflect like some of the changing nature of the borough. So we know that like there's new things that are coming up all the time. There's new developments of schools and things all the time. So we wanted to actually put that in there in order to reflect that. The other point about the safety pressure, the safety concerns and the videoing, I think that was an example. I don't think that we would require actually videos. Again, I'm sorry if it reads that way, but we wouldn't actually require people to be actually videoing everything. If you have evidence, if we have people actually saying that happens, then that's something that could lead to the investigation. That's absolutely fine. Just to say that the reason, I mean, I worked with Luqman to put this together. The reason we wanted to put that in about like the safety concerns was because over a lot of time, I know everyone here would have been frustrated that when they want something done, it's always a case of like major safety concerns, and it came down to crash data quite often. We wanted to actually put something in which actually captured the not so major safety concerns, so actually near misses or like like very minor accidents that often wouldn't be reported and often wouldn't contribute to some work being done. We want to capture that. That's why that's gone in there. But in terms of video, no, you wouldn't need to have videos. It's okay to have any other evidence. That's fine.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, what you're addressing there is the big problem you've got with KCC, with all due respect to them, that it's all based upon crash data, not upon evidence from people who are there, who know what is happening. Yeah, and there's near misses and such like. You don't get the crash data, you don't have the problem. I know why they're doing it that way. That is national standards. That is one which I don't believe is actually appropriate. And I think we're addressing it here with the way we're talking about taking evidence, video or verbal. Yeah? And as long as it's not just a town centre, then I'm happy with them category 6.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. So I think that's the way forward, and we can take that recommendation there. And I think, again, it's about, as you say, Richard, again, it's about sometimes it's about local knowledge and local evidence. Because to say, we do know, don't we? We all know our patches, and we know, and we can sort of say day by day, oh, this is happening on a daily basis. So I think, as I say, so if we use that, as I say, it's an excellent piece of work, and I think we'll make a start on it. I see 2 more hands up, so I was trying to move the recommendation, but I'm saying, are you agreeing, Julie, or is that hands up for agreeing?
It was just a further point, if I may, in terms of evidencing, you know, and sort of like KCC crash data as well, where enforcement might provide information and enforcement data. Just as an aside, we've got a situation actually happened to us. Our car, 2 of the car tyres were let down. Now we understand from local residents that this was because a certain homeowner considers the road parking outside his house to be his own. Now, obviously, we're going to take that up with enforcement as an aside, but it's where enforcement data can come in and prove useful with reviewing these schemes.
Okay, well, certainly that's something that we can take on board. But as I say, Kelly, were you indicating or were you agreeing? Sorry. No. Okay. Okay, then, members. So let's look at that recommendation to adopt the new guidance, and let's see if we can work that on and use it as a starting point. I think it's a very useful thing. As I say, I'll do an exercise myself in my own area for 1 or 2 things, and let's see how we can progress that on. Members all agreeing with that? Okay. And thank you, Lookman, for that. Okay.
Yeah.
You're all agreeing. Thank you very much. Okay. So, Neil, we're on to agenda item 10, is it? 10. So that's the A282 junction, and who's going to talk us to this one? Anybody on this one?
Is that?
You, Lookman.
Yes.
You again, Lookman. Sorry. Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I think you might be doing again. So could you repeat? Is that the 8282 junction 1A?
That is correct.
Yes,
that's right.
Okay.
Agenda item 10. Yes.
Yeah. So this is just a verbal update, really, about what we've been doing with our partners regarding the 8282 junction 1A. Which when I say partners, Highways England and Kent County Council. Since October last year, we've been meeting with them with the aim of having a working group to identify solutions to resolve traffic problems at the junction and to address the impact of future developments on the junction. The standard convention is that we have a development. Everybody looks at what the impact is and everybody says what they want. What we're trying to achieve here is to make sure that we're doing it together. And we say to developers, the impact on developers, what we want and how we're going to try and address long-term issues around that junction. Because the other challenge we have is that we tend to come up with short-term solutions just to deal with a particular development rather than dealing with the long-term issue that we have there. So following lots of meetings, we agreed to form a steering group. And with that steering group will be guided by a memorandum of understanding, which would include terms of reference and the area of influence that we're looking at. What I'm happy to do maybe the next time is to share the actual memorandum of understanding. The reason we're not sharing it here is because we're waiting for each local authority to sign it off. Once they've signed it off, we can share that. However, we have shared this with the leader of the council, and we've shared it with the director as well. So, and so people know what we're doing, that we're working with these people. And so we've agreed to come and do a verbal report on it once we've got to a place where it's good to report on. So from October, and from this month, end of this month or October, a steering group will replace the working group and will sit for the first time. So looking at all of the developments in this area of influence that we're looking at around the Junction 1A, we're also considering what's happening around Junction 1B, and clearly we're considering what's happening around Dartford Crossing. So the idea is that whatever major development we have in the area, we understand what the impact they're having, and we agree that they can make a contribution to coming up with a larger scheme that deals with the medium to long-term issues around Junction 1A. So like I said, the first meeting is October and September, October. One of the key things that we're trying to work out at the moment is mechanism for working out what the contribution of a development would be once we understand what the impact of their development is. And we have a program for the next year or so. Part of that program is to review most of the studies that's been done in that area in the past, look at what's relevant to going towards the future, and then maybe commission further studies to come up with options that are much more relevant to medium to long-term solutions. And by the time of that, at the end of April 2021, we want to have a timetable of improvements and a program that we will be able to put to each local authority's approval, escalation management team, or the approval, like their cabinet members or their senior management, so that they can sign off. But the important thing about this is that we're working together as a partner, as a partnership, and we're also bringing in people like Bexley and the Ebbsfleet Development Corporation and Gravesham. They are going to be stakeholders. They're not part of the steering group. Although Bexley have requested that they wanted to be, they said this is good work and they would like to be part of the steering group. So we're going to consider that at the first meeting. But the key aim of this is that we have a partnership going and we are able to look at the impact of development and the medium to long-term solutions around Junction 1A. And then anything associated with Junction 1B, we'll take that into consideration as well. So that is it in a sort of nutshell. That it's a lot of hard work, but that's a quick summary of it.
Well, thank you for that. As I say, that is a lot of hard work there, and obviously I think Neil will have to agenda this for a future meeting, won't we, for another update. But any members want to add any more to it? No?
Don't see any.
No, you don't see any. So thank you for that, Lukeman. And as I say, Neil will agenda that for a further update once the working party or whatever, the steering group, the members of people who are on that, in the conversations they're having, will get another update as to how it's going forwards. So thank you for that. Thank you. So now we've got agenda item 11, which is bus routes 428 and 492 update. Is there any, who's looking after this one for us?
I think that's me again.
Okay.
Okay.
Well done.
Well, I'm going to be brief on this one. It's a bit of good news. So, Transport for London, you will recall that they wanted to take away the service for 428 and 492. They did consultation some time ago. and the pandemic is sort of put everything back. They've now come to a decision that they're not going to change the service in terms of its structure. So that's great news. So the consultation will be closed out. So they're not waiting for anything anymore. The 428 will be double decked, but the school journeys will be removed, but nothing contentious there. But what they want us to have as a caveat is that when COVID-19 is over, they are going to revisit it in terms of the level of demand. So because that's the reason they looked at it in the first place, and they're more thinking about blue water. So we are probably thinking about the 428 to that area and the 492, so that they would think about whether it's still cost effective for them to run it. But that is for, as far as according to them, that's for another day. For now, we have the good news, which is they're not sort of thinking of doing anything with it. Yeah, so that's it really. That's a verbal update.
I think that's very useful, and again, we'll know because of the new schools in the area there, and whether there will be an increase in demand or not. So I think that's useful. So that looks like another one for another agenda item in the future. Do you think that, members? So you all agree with that?
I think that is correct. But Julie's saying this. I just think we've got to be warned that, that TfL want to remove the 492. Yeah, it is not within their desire to run a service outside London, which is not cost effective. It is our desire that they do that, because we need to have the link from Stone, etc., into Bexley and to the schools which are there. I think, Lookman, we need to start getting our ammunition ready. And I think we've got to start working with the schools and determine where their pupils are coming from. So as soon as they decide that COVID's over, the level's gone down again, we need to come back and say, yeah, but schools in Bexley, schools in Wilmington have this number of pupils coming from the area served by the 492, and that has got to be handled one way or another, even if it means that we've got to get Arriva or Go Coach permission to run from our areas into London to deliver our residents to the schools that they have chosen, just as we allow them to run red buses from Bexley with hundreds of people snarling up Wilmington with cars and buses. Julie.
Thank you, Julie. Julie,
You'll be pleased to hear, thoroughly support that, but I would also throw in the hospitals, especially with the partnerships now, and it goes back to Sidcup as well. So for Dartford residents that have a hospital appointment, perhaps at Sidcup.
Absolutely.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we've got to consider schools and hospitals.
Yeah, absolutely. And although we're a net importer of schools, some of our own pupils do go out to the London Borough schools as well. There are quite a substantial number of young people that actually go to Betts and Townley Road and some of the schools in Bexley as well. So it is a two-way thing. So it's certainly something that's been picked up with the schools.
Certainly, Haberdad Shazask, the 428.
Yeah.
Yep. So that. So I think.
Okay then.
We've
so
got
again, we'll as I say, we'll one for the future, but good news at the moment. So thank you, and thank you for your work on that. I've got members' inquiry items. Has any members anything there that's related to
Chairman, Councillor Matthew Davis seems to have been waiting rather a long time to address the board. I don't know. Did you want to put him in before the members' inquiry?
I'm happy to do that, because I know that you've got a particular issue, Matthew. Haven't really had a satisfactory answer, and we're trying to find some way forward to try and help you and assist you with this. And Denise did email me today saying that Helen Cobby has looked at it, but she's give you another point of reference where we might be able to take that forward. But Matthew, over to you.
Good evening, councillors, officers. Thank you very much, Councillor Allen, for allowing me to speak. The problem statement is that the junction of Chatsworth Road and Arundel Road is a bottleneck. The residents of 150 homes have to pass through to get out of their homes and get into their homes. There's no other way for them to access their homes. And Holy Trinity Primary School is the wrong side of that bottleneck. The number of children who attend Holy Trinity Primary School has doubled in the last decade, from approximately 210 to 420. There's approximately 50 plus staff as well. All of them are passing through this single bottleneck. I can tell you how many penalty charge notices have been issued there, and the answer is 0, because there are no restrictions at all in the vicinity. When I saw that Stone-the-Brent was mentioned elsewhere on this report, I drove up there on Sunday. Stone-the-Brent already has pedestrian handrails, it has extensive yellow lining, it has a crossing across the road. Holy Trinity has nothing. There is literally nothing that can be enforced, despite it being at the end of a cul-de-sac, the wrong side of the bottleneck. Wentworth Primary School is in the same division. It has 2 entrances. You can approach either entrance from either direction, so you can approach from 4 directions. There was very recently a corner protection scheme introduced on the junction of Wentworth and Chastilian. I don't believe that there is any substantive crash data at that site. But the brand new River Mill Primary School, just north of the town centre, that there are double yellow lines as far as the eye can see. There must be a mile of double yellow lines. There cannot be any crash data because it's a brand new school. Whilst I appreciate that may derive from a development obligation, that obligation must have originated from a desire to control congestion. Holy Trinity has nothing. It's not a residence parking, it's a congestion. The school has doubled, it's educating twice as many children on behalf of the local education authority, Kent, partly because recently 400 plus houses have been built in the vicinity, and the local infrastructure has not been improved to reflect this. 27 people have emailed me since the beginning of September. This is an issue that I first raised in January 2019. All it will take is a very short stretch of double yellow lines and maybe a handful of bollards on that junction. It won't displace the problem anywhere else, because that's the bottleneck. Once the bottleneck is cleared, the ability for residents to access will be greatly improved. That pinch point will be addressed. I think we are better if we design this problem out. I'd like to seek your support in a few yards of double yellow line and a couple of bollards, please. Thank you very much.
Okay then. So let's see if we can, as I say, the officers will take that on board. Your county members listening in as well. I'll do what I can to help and support you. I know Helen probably has been and looked at that, but as I say, Denise is saying, I think she said, is it go to, I think this Nicola Floodgate, is it, that we can probably take it up? But as I say,
yes, I look forward to opening the floodgates.
Yes, I'm trying to avoid that, Pam. But Matthew, I'll do what we can to support you and see if we can find a way forward on this. And is that okay? Is that okay? I'm not giving the answer for you now, but it's just
very much so. The residents are I'm sure there will be overwhelming support, and the residents will be very grateful. And thank you.
And can I ask Richard a question on this? Somewhere in your report, Richard, you talked about white lining and enforcing white lines. Can you amplify on that? Could that be a solution to Matthew's problem?
It could be a solution, but I'm also going to refer to Lukman, who's still here, I believe. He deals with those matters as well, and he may be able to expand on that for you.
Can you help us here at all?
Well, I mean, I'm not familiar with that location, so I have to. So I'm talking out of context, so to speak. But white lining will be helpful just to bring people's awareness to somewhere they need to keep clear, but it's not enforceable. So, so the minute people know that something is not enforceable, and they feel that they can get away with it, they will get away with it. So so yes, it's useful to have it, but I'm not quite sure it's enforceable. But then, like I said, I'm not quite familiar with that location. So because there could be other solutions we can come up with, but not having looked at it, it's going to be difficult.
Would a way forward for you to have a site meeting there, you know, yourself as the local member together with the officers to see, and at a particular time when you're experiencing those difficulties, to see firsthand and see whether we can, you know, you can actually come up with some suggestions, Lukman. As I say, if people are parking on a corner, I thought that was contravening the highway code, but and that's why. Again, they have quite a lot of yellow lines on corners, don't they, and things like that. And it's actually contravening the highway code as opposed to the other thing. But as I say, would that be a way forward for you, Matthew?
Yeah, that
Lukman and
yes.
Richard possibly meet you there and see whether they can come up with some ideas.
Yeah,
It might be very simple.
Is it possible to interrupt, Dan?
Solution.
Chairman.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is it possible to interrupt there, Chairman?
Yes, do please. Yeah. Sorry, Anne, come in. Yeah, come in.
Okay, I'm fully sympathise with Matthew. I haven't been down there at school opening and closing times over the years for the same reason. It's cars running around, then they have to turn around to drive away again, and then it just really clogs up. I think this might be a really good place where we can have a consultation on resident-only roads and no school vehicle entry. Because yellow lines are great and white lines, as Lukman said, not enforceable. But I live across the road from a school. People ignore them. They'll park on zigzags as long as they can wait there in their car, waiting for their child to come out. They'll park on zigzags. They park on double yellow lines. They park across people's driveways. They just don't care. So unless you can stop cars driving up there and have an alternative for them to stop to wait for their children, this is going to continue. But I'd gladly support Matthew in any way he wants.
Okay then. Well, thank you for that then, members. Right. Okay then. Neil, as I say, members' inquiry items, there's just some opportunities there. Is there anything there, anybody? If there's no members' inquiry items, I'm going to move on to... Penny, you have something that's, is it
I do
under those particular criteria?
Yeah, it's only a question on the policies, plans, strategies. Just a question to Denise. Weeding on the pavement. Have we done that this year twice, or I mean, we normally do it twice a year? I presume we've done it once. Is there a plan to do it again, Denise?
Not that I'm aware of. I can take it back to Soft Landscape team who manage that, and I can email you tomorrow, Penny.
Yeah.
Is there a particular location you've got an issue on?
No, just generally.
Oh, well, I had a very helpful reply on that in my area. They are planning to do it. They still do it twice a year. They've had a slight delay, and sometimes, as I say, a very nice explanation. Sometimes it's done, but it doesn't look like it's done because it does take some time for the weeds to go back. And sometimes the problem is if we haven't done the street cleansing, that encourages the weeds as well. So you know, again, but as I say, Denise, if you get back on that, that'd be useful. Yes, Thanks for that, then. Thank you. Thank you.
Certainly
The only-
appreciate updates on that as well, because it's very bad and it's something residents complain a lot about in
And
this
sometimes
area.
it can't be done because everybody's parking there and they can't get in. Sorry, did I see something from Jan come up there on the top of my screen? No? No?
Yes,
Okay,
Chair.
that was just a comment. Yes, go
No,
on,
it's,
Jan.
I do have a members item that I promised the resident I would raise.
Right.
Now, it's about the interaction of residents with KCC, Kent Highways, Kent Crossover Team, Vehicle Crossing Team, and Street Lighting Team. I have a resident who, he's got a 3 vehicle width frontage to his house, 2/3 along which is a lamppost. So it's all turned into a car, so you can park 3 cars there, but it has got a lamppost in one of them, so he's only got a drop curve for 2 vehicles. Now, recently, he had to have some works done on I think it was water outside, right next to where the lamppost was. So the lamppost was taken down while this work was completed, and lamppost was left aside. And he's inquired and was told by KCC that it would be silly to put it back where it was and put it on the border. And after numerous talks with KCC, he put an application in for a further drop down curb. And then he was given approval, he's paid for it, and then he got in touch with a company to do the work for him. Now that was over several weeks. Then the contractors contacted them and said, now the street lighting it was revoked pending further investigation by the street lighting team. Right, so then he's contacted KCC, and he got a name to contact. And he was asked why this it was revoked. And there's a lot of telephone conversations, but it seems like KCC, Kent Highways, and Kent Crossovers and Kent Lighting weren't talking to each other. So every time it was promised a call back, it was never received. And I'm going to go into detail later on at a different time with Denise, but he was told this lamp was not going there, and now would put back there, and that's because KCC Lighting and Crossover teams were not talking to each other. And I'm quite glad actually he's got the money back, which initially he was told he wasn't. But I just hope this is not typical of the response from KCC Lightings and Crossing teams, because it went over about a month and a half, and I spoke to him again yesterday because he's waiting for a call back from their complaints. You can't get through to Maria Baker or Kevin Gorsuch. Made complaint to customer service advisors Sergio Russman, and can't read that name, and have been given a reference requesting a callback, but it never came. And every time he's requested a callback, it never came. So I just make that, but I do wish I will be speaking to Denise over the next couple of days.
I mean, it is hard for me to comment without.
I'll bring it with me when.
And it is obviously hard for me to comment without investigation. But if you, I'm happy if you want to drop me an email tonight with all the information.
I'll send it.
I'm happy to get the explanation because no problem.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll follow it up.
Obviously, that's a specific case, but I think the question you're asking is, do they liaise with one another? And I'm sure that, best with them will they do try to do. But obviously, again, I'm sure you do, Denise. But if you've got particular difficulties, let us know, and if we can put pressure on if need be. Sorry.
I mean, that shouldn't happen because part of the process is it's one inquiry, and the way our database works, it would go, the same inquiry would go over to street lighting for authorization for the moving of that street light and the street column. So it's unusual, and that's why we need, before I can comment, I'd need to investigate. But I haven't heard of an incident like that because it is normally all the data that's collected for one particular application is on one inquiry. So any officer has got every callback, every document, every map and drawing relating to that application. So I would say it's unusual. I haven't heard of that before. So if you send me the details, I'll be able to look into it a little bit more and speak to the relevant officers.
Thanks. Thank you, Denise, and thank you, Chair. At one point, I was going to raise on behalf of ward councillors, Councillor Lloyd and Councillor Thurlow, is parking of lorry parking on verges on grassland on the junction between Heath Lane and Printed Road, and I'm sure I think Mr. Cherry was copied in on something from Patsy Thurlow.
I can give you an update on what I know of some of the Princes Road parking, because one of my colleagues met with Martin Smith last week, and Helen Cobby and her team have agreed to support the installation of some small concrete bollards. And Martin was going through with my colleague exactly where we've got the issues of that. I know one is particularly by a crossing point, if it's the same inquiry that we're talking about. And I have sent an email today to get a quote for about 65 of the bollards. So we're talking about quite a large area in that vicinity. So that has been agreed. And I have advised Martin Smith of that, and we're working with him on that one.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay then. So, okay, members, that's all the members' inquiry items. Thank you for that. Neil, the other item is for information there, which you see on the agenda there. So, have I covered everything?
Indeed, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry if it's been a bit thing. I've had, since 9:30 this morning, I've been sitting looking at screens trying to do technology. So I'm a bit brain dead. So thank you very much for your forbearance with me as well. But thank you. Thank you. Well, enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.